Hey there, thanks for joining us on episode 29 of Pixel Sift. My name is Gianni, and each week we explore the games and the news making the rounds. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Scott and Mitch.
Hey.
And making the live video stream work is our video producer, James. Also joining us in the studio today is Colton Onderwater, developer of the upcoming Super Salmon Migration and Arbalest 3035. Colton, thanks for jumping in today.
No worries. Thanks for having me, guys.
No problem at all.
Yeah, we'll also be talking about when large retailers expand into game publishing and some of the consequences about one company in particular expanding their control.
Finally, we'll talk about work-life balance when making games. One outspoken developer has been getting everyone's hackles up. We'll jump into that whole debate very soon.
Let's jump in. You're listening to Pixel Sift. Colton Onderwater is a Perth game developer from Beartooth Studios and currently working on the mobile game Super Salmon Migration. For people who are listening at home, Colton, how would you describe Super Salmon Migration?
We've been calling it an endless swimmer recently. So, typical endless runner genre, except you're a fish, so you're swimming up a river. And yeah, so that's pretty much all there is to it. Dodging obstacles, collecting flies and bugs and things like that, and buying costumes, and that's game, yeah.
Why do you think it is that so many of these endless runners and endless sort of gameplay loopy sort of things have kind of come into fashion now?
It's just, it's a surefire way to get retention from your consumer base, really, to kind of keep them involved in the game. I mean, obviously the whole concept behind the endless runner is that you can go endlessly, and yeah, that's the easiest way to kind of keep people playing. So. And
what do you do to kind of mix it up enough so that people are kind of always working towards something, or what's the...
Offering incentives for running further or swimming further in this case, so those are the things like costumes and stuff like that. That's what that comes into play, or you could even get like level unlocks and things like that. So yeah, well, that's it. Just rewarding, the consumer for going further in your game to keep them, wanting to push themselves. Also, having scoring and stuff like that creates that whole competitive concept between them and other people that might be playing the game as well.
You can have like leaderboards.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
When you're making a game like this, have you thought about how it's actually going to be released? Are you going to have it as a free game with paid content, or are you going to release it as a paid game? What sort of things were you kind of...
Yeah, we did think about this quite a bit, and when thinking about this sort of thing, we kind of, me personally, wanted to kind of take into consideration what kind of studio I would be. And I wouldn't necessarily call myself a mobile game developer, my passion is in indie games and stuff like that. So when it came to pricing this game, it would be very easy to assume it would be a free game with microtransactions, because we have like tiered costumes and things like that. But I prefer to go to the option just all out premium, because I find that way the connection between the studio and the consumer base is a lot more intimate if you just stick to premium games. And it's looked at less of a mobile app or a mobile game and more like an indie game that just happens to be on the mobile platform using that pricing model as well. So
I mean,
is that a legitimate concern? Like, your indie game developers now are afraid of falling into the mobile genre, and they just become a mobile developer just based on the fact that most of those games can be run on mobile?
Yeah, well, it's a legitimate concern for me in my studio, I suppose. I'm not sure, all around what it would be, because obviously a studio needs to sustain itself, and then you've got to take these things into consideration as well. But, for just on a personal level, for me, that is a very important thing to keep in mind. So
does it just make sense for a game like Super Salmon Migration to be mobile, but that's not going to be the thing that you guys are going to be doing, or is this a direction that you kind of are finding interesting at the moment?
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, the main purpose of it was for me to cut my teeth on the mobile games, and kind of explore and see what that whole development process was like, because I never made a mobile game before. So, it started off as a learning experience for me, and then when that kind of picked up, kind of grew on its own. But yeah, for sure, I definitely want to focus more on the, your typical indie game space and what that sort of thing would look like. So yeah.
So I guess what are some of the big things you have learnt from moving into this mobile game sort of?
I guess technical side, you got your optimization and stuff like that. Like, you kind of have to keep that in mind when developing, all the way from the beginning concept to art style and things like that. You got to keep space in mind. The volatility of the mobile market, I mean, it's a whole different beast to wrestle with when it comes to that, Just getting noticed, a lot of it, you can do all the marketing you want, but a lot of it depends on, just getting the right people to pick up on it and stuff like that. And Yeah, so those two are the biggest things that I've learned. And then I guess, yeah, well, I'll just go with that.
You've still got a bit of time before the
Yeah,
game kind of
exactly.
comes out, so
Yeah.
you'll see how it goes
Yeah, exactly.
as you're going through. I guess one of the main things about Super Salmon Migration that I noticed is it's sort of like a one-touch, almost like one-button style gameplay. What do you have to do when you're trying to make a game fun for just one button? Like, what are some of the things that you think about when you...
It would just creating an effective feedback loop. So ensuring that the consumer is getting enough stimulant from that one button. So things like our art style gets taken into account for that. Things like the fish's movement, so how it flows and things like that. So it's, when you're touching the screen for such an input, that it's a satisfying touch, and it feels good to just do that. Just tap the screen or hold your button down. So yeah.
You mentioned the art style as well, and both Super Salmon Migration and Arbalest have really sort of striking art styles. How did you kind of end up in those directions, or what was kind of the design decisions that you made that ended up with the games that look the way they do?
Well, both games they took their different paths going on art styles. Arbalest was actually hired out a concept artist, and I just told her, look, give me 10 different screenshots, of different art styles and stuff like that, and I kind of mishmashed them all together, and then I found one that worked. So that was really good. And then this one, I was actually a children's book that I was reading, and I really, really loved the illustration style of it. Emily Winters is the illustrator of that. You can go look her up, and it kind of inspired me, and I kind of based it around that sort of stuff. So yeah.
And you've also got, for all the costumes and stuff, you've got other different types of things. I think there's like robotics, like Terminator-style salmon and stuff. How do you, I guess, mesh these different art styles together to kind of work, or when you're designing new sort of outfits for the salmon, I guess. What do you think about when you're making those?
So we just, at the moment, the way that I picked the costumes, we just got a big list, like a huge list of costumes, like it's like 100 or so, and then I just firstly look at all the ideas. I'm like, okay, this one would work, this one would work, this one would work, and I'll grab them, draw them up and stuff like that. And it's just a matter of tweaking, comparing it to the original fish, the template model, and kind of just tweaking it from there, and then kind of making sure, color palette's right and stuff like that, and that it all fits in right. So it's just a matter of reiterating on costume design and stuff like that. So that's what it is.
You mentioned the force feedback earlier. Is it like, so I guess a lot of games now, they seem to lack that almost, and the good ones really do. I mean, was that definitely, like, how did you manage to make that one of the core elements of your game?
One of our big things, what we did, because there's a team of 3 people that are making this. So we had a two programmers, a gameplay programmer and someone who's programming everything else essentially. And the gameplay programmer, that was his one task. It's like, look, we got this one function doing, and we need you to make this feel as good as possible. And just, dedicating time to it, I guess that would be our main thing. And that's how we kind of got it to work.
So I guess phones have like a rumble function. Would you consider like using that as well?
No, not really. I mean, rumble functions, like those sorts of things, like you got to take into consideration the battery life of the phone and things like that as well. Like we want to kind of make this game as simple as possible. So things like online features and, all those peripheral functions we're kind of avoiding.
Right.
Yeah.
So the game is still in its alpha phase in the current download, but seems quite polished and ready to launch almost. Is there much more content due for the full release?
Yeah, a lot more costumes. That's a big thing, and then we got 2 extra levels as well that we're putting in as well with all their own obstacles and things like that too. So.
And when is the final due date for this?
We're looking at mid-March at the moment. Yeah.
Exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Great. Well, you can jump on over to bear-tooth.com if you want to check out all the updates and everything that Colton and the team are putting together for Super Salmon Migration. Colton, we'll get you to stick around and we'll have a chat about some of the other topics we've got on today. And let's jump into some of those now.
You're listening to Pixel Sift. Or you might be watching Pixel Sift on Twitch. Pixel Sift.
Yeah, so games publishing has become big business, and with the amount of money moving through these organizations, it's very tempting for large companies to try and break into the market. The latest group to actually fully commit to this now is GameStop, and these are American guys, and they're in charge of EB Games here in Australia.
Which is one of the biggest, I guess, dedicated games retailers now. We don't really have anyone
big
else.
As to say I can't think of another one.
No,
well, Game was the only other one that used to be around that was just a dedicated game shop, and then they've pretty much gone under now. They don't exist in Australia anymore. I think they're a little bit left in the UK.
What was that one?
Game?
Just Game.
Just Game,
I
yeah.
never even...
Yeah, they had all the...
Never even noticed.
But yeah, like, they're the one major retailer, other than buying games in shops that would sell a bunch of different things. This is the only kind of dedicated...
And look, we've touched on this before. The value, I guess, of this kind of tangible retail store for secondhand games and whatever else. It's a really good thing for the community to have. But obviously, as far as with the digital world, things are going towards that digital delivery system.
I think that's what's most interesting about this move is the fact that they are completely open to the digital aspect of games publishing. And traditionally, retailers have moved away from it, and even so far as to not stock one of the models of PS Vita because it didn't take UMDs anymore. It was like completely online, and they didn't want to stock it because where they make their money is not necessarily on hardware, but it's games and peripherals. So now they seem to be, I guess, wanting to break into that themselves.
Well, I think it's just that for them, it's like understanding an admission that, to be successful, they have to move into some kind of digital release circuit, a la Valve or whatever, that their success on its own is enough to encourage anybody to jump into it. I mean, I don't feel that they really want to give up their retail kind of prowess, but doing it on its own is just not kind of realistic anymore. There's
this term basically in economics called vertical integration, and that's where you control every level of production of something.
Right.
So, for example, normally you'd have people making games, and then you would buy them off a distributor or a publisher and then sell them in your shop. But if you are the distributor and the publisher, then you own that there, and you don't have to have their cut on top. You just absorb more of it into your fee structure, basically.
I didn't know you were such a capitalist.
Oh, look, that's how you would do it, basically.
Yeah,
this is the move to what they're doing.
Dude, he runs this show, man.
This multi-million-dollar show.
Yeah.
Monopoly.
The GameStop in the States has actually an online shop front, and I'm pretty sure they would have one here as well. So being able to produce content that is directly for your thing, and they already have a lot of deals. They have a lot of market power already, in that they've got exclusive DLC and pre-order bonuses that are only through them. And then if they've got publishing their own games in-house, the thing that I'm concerned about is that maybe you may not be able to buy...
That is the main concern.
Yeah, you may not be able to buy their published games anywhere other than their shop.
You're being echoed quite a bit in the community as well, actually, Johnny.
We haven't read that anywhere yet, though. I don't know. I haven't.
Well, the thing is, okay, so let's have a look at another one. Let's have a look at Steam, for example. And Steam has its own games, which it publishes, and it's theirs, like, for example, Portal and Left 4 Dead and all that. And they still, sell those on other platforms, and they still publish other games.
So they're a really good example of people that have done it well, and it's been received really well, and it's been incredibly successful. I mean...
Well, I guess the main thing... So, this is one of the big box retailers, and I'm just concerned that when you have got something like this, which is a monopoly on a particular thing, I mean, to say that they haven't said that they're obviously going to only sell their games on there, but some of the big names on there are like Insomniac, which, just released a new Ratchet and Clank game. Maybe it'll be in the future, the only place you can physically go to buy that, or even online to buy that, would be through their channel, and there's no cost pressure on them to give a reasonable price.
That's not good for them in the public eye as a publisher, especially just starting up as well.
It seems that that kind of thing that you just talk about, like releasing something on one platform only, it seems to be going away, actually.
Yeah.
For example, Titanfall 2 is a big one that was exclusively Xbox, and that moved a lot of Xbox Ones. Titanfall.
Yeah, but it's not. I'm not talking about like one platform. I'm talking about one shop.
Yeah,
that's true.
You know what I mean? Like they could be on everything. Say, for example, you pick up, Ratchet and Clank, and that's on everything.
But I'm talking about the monetary value. Like, even though you're talking about one shop, but it's just limiting sales avenues. People just traditionally don't really do that anymore.
Yeah, but if you've got a high-profile game that people want to buy, and they can only buy it one place, and you set the price of it because you're the publisher. You just never increase the price.
With GameStop's sales dropping pretty dramatically at the moment, and that's why they're jumping into this digital world. I can't feel them wanting to limit their their reach, I guess, as a publisher, because that's only what it's going to do. And the whole idea behind it is offering something unique other than retail. That's going to help their bottom line regardless.
Yeah, Colton, what do you think about the whole publishing?
Yeah, well, from what I'm hearing, about your concern is that you're concerned that they're going to take on Steam, essentially.
Well, I'm just
I just don't want to make another account.
Yeah.
I don't. It's
Another
not that I
pass
don't
I
want.
to remember.
It's not that I don't want. Like I personally, I'm someone who believes in competition in these
Yeah.
sort of things, and I think that works out the best for the consumer when there's lots of different places that you can buy the same thing, and people have to offer better service or better pricing in order to do that. And I think for some games, there could be. Well, if they're publishing their own stuff in house, there's a risk that they could be. They're the only place to get this game.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you just got to suck it up if they're giving you a bad deal.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. I see what you're saying there. And like on the flip side, you brought the example of games moving consoles and stuff like that. Like the exclusivity in consoles is a lot more detrimental because, buying a new console for a game is a much bigger deal than going to a different marketplace. But on the other side, like going up against Steam, it's just not like I don't see it as a good idea anytime soon. Like even if you offer a better service, a better, price models and stuff like that, you just won't get the recognition because a lot of times people become aware of games now in the digital marketplace because it's through Steam itself as well. So from straight up marketing side perspective as well, keeping it away from something like a Steam store, unless if you're a household name like EA would do with something like The Sims, then you wouldn't be able to, get any reach at all.
The interesting thing I think about the publisher relationship with developers when they're putting the games out there, they have a lot of control about where that game is distributed as well. So, for example, if you took up a publishing deal with a particular publisher and they said, yes, we'll get your thing to market, don't worry about that, you just make the best game you can. They made decisions saying, they may. If you're in a position where you're a small developer and this is the first time you've been published, you may not have the clout to kind of argue against them only having it on one shop front.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's... I don't know. It could be we're just kind of getting worried about nothing, and this is going to be no problem.
To be honest with you, we're gonna this episode of Pixel just gonna be like, oh yeah, they complained about that thing. That's not gonna affect us.
Well,
at
yeah.
all.
I mean, there is obviously something to worry about of GameStop making it some kind of exclusive thing where you only have to go through them to get whatever titles they're now going to be in charge of because of their studios that they're going to whatever.
Yeah.
But we don't know anything. They could become a really good trusted company that do everything great and become a Steam 2.0 kind of thing.
A lot of the concerns that we're kind of holding out here is people said this a lot about the EA's Origin when it came out.
EA's got a bad history for
and
this
EA
kind of
doesn't have a
thing.
great history of this sort of stuff, and they also restricted their sales of their online purchasing for games like Battlefront. I'm pretty sure you can only buy through that digitally on Origin. You can also only get the recent Battlefields on there, and they're not available on Steam at all. But they've taken their opposite to that is they've actually been quite aggressive with their discounts and things like that. So they're trying to mirror the whole Steam model. So they're getting people in that way. But, if they chose not to do that, if you wanted to buy it digitally, because a lot of people, you buy a computer now, you don't have a CD drive. You can't basically put it in there. You have to get it through one place, and they're the only place selling it. Then you're kind of stuck otherwise.
It's interesting that they're not doing anything to try and they're not making moves to try and protect maybe this second-hand market.
Well, that's where they used to make a huge amount of their money from.
That seems like where they make most of their money now, the second-hand market, because you just buy these games off people.
But that would go hand in hand with going digital, though, as well.
That's true,
so.
yeah.
Maybe they could offer... Maybe that's one thing they might offer, is that actually you can trade your key in or whatever, and we'll resell it and on to someone else, and then you get a trade-in value and then credit. Like that, I know there's a lot of people who... will buy Steam games and never play them. And then you'd probably be like, I'm actually never going to play this game. I might be good to trade it in. Yeah. And then, there's ways that they've set this up in the EU as well that you can sell digital goods again onto third parties. So, it does technically, it's technically feasible. We can
I know people that have big Steam libraries. These things.
One thing I'm interested to see how they tackle is the digital kind of the aging of games kind of thing, and when they become less popular and therefore less pricey. As far digital games generally don't lose their price, which is kind of
they tend to stick around. Yeah, look, it's going to be
issue.
It's a very interesting sort of topic. I think we'll at the moment we're kind of speculating on the worst that could happen from it. We may be pleasantly surprised, so we'll be keeping an eye on that and see what happens in say 6 months' time. Shall we come back to this?
We're going to be wrong.
I reckon we will be, to be honest. But you got to doom and gloom it. All right, let's jump into our next topic.
Visit us on pixelsift.com.au.
Now, crunch time is something people working in high-pressure situations requiring deliverables can understand easily, but the rest of us may not realise how stressful a time it can be, especially when you're not being rewarded properly for the job you're doing. Over the last month, there has been online back and forth between some of the gaming industry discussing the need and lack of support for a general fair go for these workers, giving it their most to supply us with the best they can. It's led to some interesting articles and differing opinions, that's for sure. Thoughts on the current goings on?
So Kate Edwards
Yes.
who's from the International Game Developers Association, did a survey of all their members basically to kind of find out what the feeling of people who make games for a living, what's their
opinion?
Yeah. And 37% of their members said that there was no compensation, financial, time off, time in lieu, anything for this crunch time, basically for crunching at the end of a game development process where you chuck in so much time to, make a game. And basically this was a concern. That's 40% of people. So
this is something that... Is this a new concept? Like,
this is nothing new.
It's definitely not new, no.
Like, this is... I read articles and conversations about this going back, 10 years or so. There was actually conversations about the morality and necessity of crunch going back to 2004 when the game designer Aaron Hoffman wrote about an expose about the practices at video game publisher EA. So, this goes back a while, and people like Electronic Arts and other publishers with not the best rep have probably been pushing this quite hard for a while now.
What I meant by that is this exclusive to video games?
No, I don't think so.
How about industries
Like I
handle
said,
this?
well, I used to work as a structural draftsman, and as a building gets closer to the point where, it's ended, you crunch time, you're doing 60 plus hours a week. But I was getting paid for that, and I never would have done it if I hadn't been. I mean, it's a job, regardless of it being for the love of the art or whatever that comes with being in the video game industry. It's still a job. Like, a lot of these people aren't the creators or entrepreneurs in charge of this. They're just, a person working at a desk.
So Alex St. John, he's a outspoken game developer. He came out and basically said that game development, it's not a job. It's
an art.
It's an art.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that people have to sort of take this entrepreneurial thing where they're chucking in all this time. But for a lot of people in these big companies, that is what it is. You aren't going to get a greater share cut, basically, for a big company like EA if you chuck in more time. If you're in a small indie development thing, like for example, Beartooth Studios, the more time you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it.
Yeah, but you're a little bit closer to it there, and you have a more invested interest. I feel like your team would be exactly that, a little bit more of a close team, wanting to crunch kind of thing for everybody, rather than just one of the numbers.
Oh yeah, exactly, for sure. It's a completely different work dynamic.
Yeah.
Compared to being in a bigger studio, definitely. Like, it's my hobby as well as my job, and differentiating art from your job is a ridiculous concept, I reckon. Like, doing art for a job is something that you do. Like, that's what artists do, that's what writers do, as well as game developers.
I think it also devalues art as well. It kind of says that art has to only be for the purpose of being something artistic. It can't be something to make you money.
But it's this whole idea of artists being the struggling poor people kind of thing.
Starving artist.
Yeah, it does exactly. It does nothing to go against that, which is a bit of a problem. He said, Alex St. John, one of the quotes that I really didn't like, but it was
one
a
that
gem.
Caught in your mind.
Yeah. It was, don't be in the game industry if you can't love all 80 hours, like a week of it. You're taking a job from somebody who would really value it. I don't know. I don't know where to start with how I feel about that.
Demanding compensation, like appropriate compensation such as pay, I don't think that's not loving it.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it is work.
In no other industry would people be expected to do 80 hours without getting paid, their 80 hours, or at least close to it, I just feel like he's being a bit ridiculous. And also kind of talking about the initial article, which was by Dean Takahashi, and kind of saying he's a little bit of a crybaby, maybe. Which I disagree with.
Especially in media creation, for example, if you've got a deadline or you've got to write up your script before your episode comes along, there is going to be this crunch where everyone's jumping in there and you've got things that need to meet that thing. But there is a work-life balance that people need to maintain, because there is a burnout. And they said, I read a study earlier in the week where they said that people actually, after doing these long crunches for games like from the 90s era, actually suffered brain damage because of the lack of sleep and mental toll and physical toll as well. And to say that you just got to sort of knuckle up and do it, basically, to, make your thing is, I don't know.
It's a big ask. Like Rami Ismail said with his response to Alex St. John's article, he said, structural crunch is bad and burning out is real. Like, this does happen, and people can only take so much of being pushed to their limits.
Just on so many levels, I'm kind of against that whole concept, you know? Like, from, as a personal level, like I said, running my own indie studio, hobby developing, like, we crunch and stuff like that all the time, but you got to have an awareness that your best creativity, like your best work outputting, is when everything's working in your brain, like when you're firing on all cylinders. So even from a productive standpoint, it's just a really unhealthy attitude to have. And to have this whole idea that I want to pursue my passion, I want to, go out and make games, okay, but I need to sacrifice pretty much all my social life, and I'm going to ruin my family doing it. But this is and saying that's just the price you pay for this sort of work. It's like pushing on violating basic human rights. Like, that's what I reckon. I mean, Alex St. John, he has a history of just saying the most disgusting... Sorry, I'm getting emotional about this.
Please go
for it, dude.
He has a history of saying the most disgusting things, like, from things like, we should hire more disabled workers because we can overwork them and won't complain about it. Like, he puts his stuff on record.
He seems to be a little bit twisted from what the rest of the video game industry is really kind of feeling.
Yeah, and he almost prides himself on these, like, sociopathic attitudes that he has towards other people and like towards having a good work ethic as well. So
like a journalistic shock jock.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, he's getting a lot of attention for this.
Well, he is.
Who knew who this guy was before this week, or maybe we push him to the back of your mind and he's back up in the news again. So,
but look, it is an issue, and it definitely needs to be addressed. A 2014 survey by the International Game Developers Association found that 81% of polled game developers had crunched at some point over the last 2 years, and 50% felt crunch was expected in their workplace as a normal part of the job. So, like, it's an ingrained kind of part of the video game developer culture, at least on a bigger kind of level. And like, nothing really can be done about this until game developers basically unionize. Something of the union variety needs to come up and look after you guys.
Interestingly, in Australia, the same union that covers radio journalists and media people actually cover game developers as well. So
see, that's fantastic.
Look at that.
Yeah, but I don't know, for a lot of people who are going to be working in these smaller studios, maybe 10 people, where you're kind of chipping away, and then as that kind of expands out, you don't know whether things are going to happen. And a lot of these things happen so quickly as well that you don't have a time to set in like, oh, all right, now we need to hire an HR manager or whatever, because you're just trying to make games and, that's what you're an expert in. So, yeah, I can understand how these things could get to these things. But these big companies that are making millions upon millions of dollars, having a good way to care for your employees is a good way to make sure that you have good
So
work.
you can't honestly say companies making millions and millions of dollars and then say it's not work. It's like,
exactly. Somebody's making money off of these guys pushing themselves, so they need to get their fair dues.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, look, that's all we've got time for today. So thank you very much for joining us for another episode of Pixel Sift. My name is Gianni. You can check out all of our episode notes and everything on our website, which is www.pixelsift.com.au. We've got another event coming up very soon. We'll be down at the Glitch with the Perth Rocket League for their mini tournament event. That's on Sunday, the 15th of May from 12 p.m. You can enter in your team of two to win the prizes that are on offer. You can find links to that event on our site in the events tab, or you can go in the show notes for this episode, and we'll be shoutcasting the finals as well. So you can watch it on our Twitch channel if you can't make it down. Scott, if people want to find us on social media, where should they head to?
Gianni, people can find us at facebook.com/pixelsift, twitter.com/pixelsift, twitch.tv/pixelsift, and youtube.com/pixelsiftau.
And Mitch, if people want to listen to our other episodes, where should they head to?
Yeah, if you don't feel like downloading them, you can go to our website. It's all there. And but if you do want to download them, you can go to iTunes, Pocket Casts, or using the RSS link on the website.
And if you're on iTunes or any of your other podcasting systems, we're podcasting systems?
Yeah.
No, own it. No, system.
Yep. Podcasting system.
Yep.
If you're on podcasting system, please put in a review. Give us a review and share us with your friends. If you enjoyed the show, we'd love to hear more people checking us out.
Always.
It'd be great. Colton, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you,
All
Colton.
good. Thanks for having me.
We will check out a bit of your game. We're going to play a bit of that in a second. We can play some of that. You can check out Colton's work at bear-tooth.com, Super Salmon Migration, and Arbalest 3035. Thanks a lot.
Peace out.
Bye.